This past offseason, it looked like the Clippers had given up. They let Paul George walk for nothing and were headed into the season relying heavily on injury-riddled and aging stars James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And they looked like a team that was headed for a complete reset. Well, at least that's how I felt at the time. And honestly, who could blame me? This roster looked like a borderline play-in team within a very strong Western Conference. You had Harden and Kawhi, and then also Norm Powell, Zubac. There was really no reason to take this team seriously, unless Norm Powell was just somehow better than Paul George this year, and Zubac looked like an All-NBA candidate, and Ty Lue could once again put together one of the best defenses in the entire league, and James Harden could carry extra responsibility and stay healthy while they waited for Kawhi to come back from injury, and Kawhi could miraculously come back from another major injury and look like an All-NBA player again after basically being sent home from Team USA this summer because he wasn't healthy enough. Unless all of those things happened, there was no reason to take the Clippers seriously. Well, here we are, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm genuinely scared of the Clippers again. They're 23-11 in the games that Kawhi has played this season. He looks as healthy as he has in years, and that record, 23-11, if they did that over the entirety of the season, that winning percentage would be good enough for the second best record in the entire Western Conference this season. Not to mention the fact that they are amazing at home. They've created this home environment of the Intuit Dome, where as of this recording, they're 28-11 at home, which is a massive advantage in a playoff series. They're great defensively. They have a ton of length and depth on that end of the floor. Harden is still a great facilitator. He looks like someone that is obviously at a different point of his career, but is still really good as the engine of an offense. And Ty Lue is still a great coach, which was overlooked going into the season. He continues to be one of the most underrated coaches in the entire league. And for most of the year, that combination was good enough to just be kind of fine, but the real game changer towards the end of the season has been the return of Kawhi. He suddenly looks like an all-NBA guy right now. There are seriously nights where he looks like one of the best players in the entire league. He's guarding, he's getting to his mid-range shots, he's making a ton of jumpers, he's getting to the line. He looks like 2019 Kawhi Leonard on some nights, and I honestly don't even understand how that's possible. It was 8 years ago when he first started having issues with his leg and with the Spurs. He forced his way out of there, ends up getting traded to Toronto, wins the title in 2019, but is kind of limping to the finish line. He's amazing in the playoffs, but you can tell that he's just not 100%. Then we get to the 2021 playoffs. Now he's on the Clippers. He partially tears his ACL. They make it to the Western Conference Finals anyway, but that certainly was a missed opportunity for that team. He misses the entirety of the next season. Then in the 2023 playoffs, he comes back and tears his meniscus in the same knee in game one of the playoffs, and the Clippers lose in the first round. The following year, he plays 68 games, which is the most he's played in a while, but once again has knee issues at the end of the season and misses the playoffs. Then this past summer, he withdraws from Team USA under mysterious circumstances and putting out a statement basically saying he thought he could play. They were disappointed that he wasn't given the opportunity to play. And then he goes into this season and doesn't play at all until January. Yet somehow, despite all of that stuff combined, Kawhi Leonard just played in a back-to-back, which is something that I honestly never thought he would do ever again, given his injury history. And this version of Kawhi Leonard changes absolutely everything for the Clippers and elevates them from a solid team, maybe a borderline playoff team, to oh my gosh, the Clippers might actually have an upset or two in them in the postseason, and at that point, all bets are off. And this Kawhi situation is especially crazy when you consider what happened with Paul George in Philly this year and the decision that the Clippers made in the offseason to not keep him. If you look up the word disaster in the dictionary, next to it is exactly what happened with Paul George and the Sixers this year. He had genuinely his worst year in the league since like his second season. He had a couple of weird injuries in the beginning of the year where he missed a couple of weeks with some knee stuff. It was just like he slipped or he hurt his hand. Just a couple of crazy things, and the Sixers just completely fell apart. Embiid never got healthy, and what honestly I thought was going to happen to the Clippers this year actually happened to Philadelphia. And now, of course, everybody's going back to their decision to let Paul George walk and say that it was a great decision. I certainly was skeptical of it at the time because I didn't understand how just losing him for nothing was better than trying to work out a trade with Golden State or trying to work out a trade with Miami or whatever the case may be. These teams that were certainly interested in trading for Paul George, they just let him walk for nothing anyway. And it's not like they didn't want him back. They just wanted him back on a 3-year deal rather than a 4-year deal. Philadelphia steps up, they take the risk, they sign him to the 4-year deal, and now honestly, the Paul George contract looks like, maybe next to Joel Embiid and Bradley Beal, one of the worst contracts in the entire league. So him leaving turns out to actually be a good thing. Norm Powell has an amazing season. They have other guys step up. Their roster is more well-rounded. They know exactly who they are. When Kawhi's not out there, it's Harden's team. When Kawhi's out there, they share the ball. They're great defensively around James Harden. They've turned this into an unbelievable situation going into the postseason. But that wasn't everything that went into my skepticism with the Paul George decision. One of the main issues I had was the fact that I didn't think they could survive relying on James Harden until Kawhi came back and then rely on them together to stay healthy. The extra responsibility on each of those guys without Paul George there was one of the main concerns. But right now, the way they're playing, they absolutely can count on both of these guys. But here's the problem for the Clippers. Even though they're great right now when Kawhi plays, when he doesn't, they're just kind of okay, which is a huge problem for two reasons. One, they aren't a very high seed and might actually be a play-in team. And first and foremost, you want to avoid the extra games. If you're the Clippers, a team that's already kind of on this teeter-totter of, oh my gosh, we might get hurt at any moment. You don't want to add extra games by playing in one or maybe two play-in games. And you certainly want to avoid the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't think OKC would be super excited about playing the Clippers. I don't think the Clippers are necessarily afraid of OKC, but there are tiers within the Western Conference, and the tiers basically are tier 1 is OKC, tier 2 is like all of the 2 through 8 teams in the postseason. So if you're a Clippers team that's trying to go on a run, you want to avoid play-in games and you want to avoid being the 8 seed and having to play OKC in the first round. And that's just a product of Kawhi not playing the entire season. Like I said, the record that they have when he plays gives them a really good chance to be the second or the third best team in the Western Conference. And right now, they're fighting for a play-in spot, might have to play the 1 seed in the first round, despite being much better than a typical 8 seed. The other issue, of course, here is, will they stay healthy? I just went through all of Kawhi's injury history, and not only is it lengthy, it is extremely untimely. He gets hurt in the playoffs a bunch, especially during his Clippers tenure, and really there's only been 1 or 2 seasons where he has actually been healthy in the postseason. Now, the upside of that is, maybe they'll be really good now that Kawhi is actually healthy, potentially going into the postseason. We don't know what it looks like when he is healthy with the Clippers in the playoffs, but we might still not get to see that because you're always worried that he is going to get hurt and that the extra responsibility on Harden has just been too much throughout the season. We've been here before with this franchise. The Clippers in the Kawhi era have been a franchise of disappointment. It's not just the injury stuff, although that's been a massive piece of it and was a real concern at the time that they brought in Kawhi and Paul George in the first place. But when you go back to the bubble year as well, I thought they were the best team in the league going into the bubble. The Lakers end up winning the title in 2020. I thought the Clippers had the best roster. They were playing the best. And quite frankly, had the season progressed as normal, had the season not gotten suspended and then gone to the bubble, I think the Clippers would have had a better chance at winning the NBA title. They did not have a good time in the bubble. They basically quit and were completely disinterested. And all of a sudden, the Lakers end up winning the titles. We've been here before with high expectations going into the postseason and then them falling short. And this seems to happen every single year, right? There's always a lower seeded team that you don't really want to play. A few different years, it was a team like the Lakers that ended up winning a first round series against Memphis because Ja gets hurt. Then, of course, you have multiple different years where the Miami Heat go on a great run in the postseason. The Nets had one of these where Kyrie and KD got healthy. People were afraid of them potentially in the first round against the Celtics. But most of the time, like with the Nets against the Celtics, it ends up kind of being nothing. And that might be the case here with the Clippers as well. But the bottom line is, this is a variable that teams within the Western Conference did not anticipate. If you thought that Kawhi was not only going to come back healthy this season, but look as good as he has, good for you, because I don't think there's many people on the planet that had this concept of this Clippers team in their mind going into the postseason. The question is now, am I really going to count on the Clippers? Am I going to get excited about the possibility of them making a deep postseason run? Of course not. But the point is, it's a crazy story. It's something we did not anticipate, we did not expect, because honestly, this version of the Clippers team might be the second best team in the entire Western Conference when healthy, and they might end up having to play OKC in the first round. Imagine being the Thunder, having one of the best regular seasons in the history of the league, and then all of a sudden you're looking at Kawhi and James Harden and all this length and depth and this playoff-tested coach in Ty Lue. This is a Thunder team that still hasn't really done a whole lot in the playoffs. They lose in the second round last year against Dallas, and yes, a competitive series, but still, they're not a playoff-tested team. Kawhi Leonard has won a title with multiple franchises. Ty Lue has won a title as a coach. That is a terrifying proposition if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder. And if you're going to tell me going into the playoffs that every single team in the league is going to be healthy, I think the team I least want to play in the West, outside of the Oklahoma City Thunder, might just be the Clippers. But that's just the theme of this era of Clippers basketball, right? The high expectations, you know what the potential is, you know what the upside is for the Clippers, and then it all just kind of falls apart at the worst possible moment. It's very realistic to expect that that might happen this year again as well. Kawhi might hurt his knee. Kawhi might get hurt. James Harden might pull a hamstring. They might just not play that well in the postseason. They might not shoot the ball very well. But all I'm saying is we are right back where we've always been with the Clippers when they're healthy, minus Paul George, which is an unbelievable twist to this story. And as always with the Clippers, as we go into the postseason, despite the high expectations, we will see if it actually means anything.